Welcome to another episode of Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. Brian Florentin and Erica L. Ayala here live at Barclays Center right after the final regular season game of the 2023 season. We're going to recap that and then break down the rest of the playoffs coming up on this episode of Gotta Get Up. Gotta get up, gotta get up, gotta get up. Hey, women's basketball fans, welcome to Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, brought to you by Black Rosie Media and hosted by Erica L. Ayala. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Another episode of Gotta Get Up where Brian and I are right here in Barclays Center. Brian, it was Washington at New York Liberty, and as it turns out, that is exactly the matchup that we are going to see starting Friday in the WNBA playoffs. But this one was looking like it might go to overtime, and then Slim called game.
Yeah, that was a beautiful alley-oop pass that they executed out of bounds. It's just like, with plays like that, especially with under a second, you need to have everything go exactly right. And Sykes getting to her spot, being able to just rise just high enough above Stewie, who made a tremendous block like half a second earlier. So it felt like everything went exactly right for Washington. And I think for that group, gave them a really positive end to their season. After they lost on Friday, Eric Tebow was like, they asked him if he was just going to sit people because they got the 7 seed locked. And he's like, no, I can't, because I want them to end on a high note. It doesn't feel good to lose like that, like how they did Friday night. We want to make sure we're playing well going to the playoffs, and mission accomplished.
We're taking our mics away. Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that, because I was able to head over to Washington's Postgame Media availability, which we usually don't do this, but I'm going to post the whole thing for y'all because it is comedy. I know Sydney Colson and T-Play have a show coming out, but I think Slim and Tosh need their own show. Let's take you over to Washington postgame.
Never. We just made a decision.
When he called the timeout,
we literally were like,
you'll see us walking. I said,
he was like, I'm throwing it. Shoot it.
We knew that
So-
most likely there's going to be a lob.
Mhm.
She's probably going to take it out. I'm probably going to be the person receiving a lob.
Pepper.
So, yeah, it was just one of those things where we had our minds made up that we were not trying to go into overtime again, because the last time we didn't end so well.
And as soon as I saw her 1-2, I said, and release.
Yep. So it's just one of those things where you just got to shoot the ball.
I would just like to say I threw that over JJ too.
She did, because when you was out of
I
bounds,
purposely took the steps
I know,
back
I was
so I
about to
could
say, I'm
see.
like, damn, JJ kind of big. And then that's why I took my 2 steps so
'Cause
big.
when I stood up on her, it was like this. When I took a step back, it was like this. I said, okay, I can see.
Yeah, no, you do it perfectly, bro. It was like so perfect.
So that's what Washington had to say after the game. Slim broke that play down beautifully, expertly. She talked also about being able to anticipate somewhat because she played with Stewie before, and just knowing players' tendencies in the WNBA, because these players do play overseas together and the like, but also being able to communicate with her own teammates, asking Elena Deladon to step a little bit lower in the block so that she could push New York's defense a little bit lower, closer to the baseline. That gives her a shot closer to the rim.
Yeah.
She also talked about Tosh Cloud and knowing that Tosh was going to float it. I thought it was also hilarious when you saw the clip that the two of them, so they came out of the huddle. Presumably Washington had a conversation about what they wanted to see in the huddle. And then those two went to each other and it's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And I think it was Tosh that was like, you know, no shade, no disrespect to Tebow, to Eric, but we knew what we wanted to do.
I love when players have chemistry like that, because they just know, oh, I'm going to put it exactly here, and only you know how to get there, and I know you got it. I'm going to get that.
Exactly.
We make it work.
And that's what the type of communication, the type of trust, and the confidence, quite honestly, that you need. So now let's talk about things on the New York Liberty side. I think that for a team that had been trending so much to what I think is likely the closest we've seen to their max capacity, I don't think we saw that today.
Yeah, something interesting that Sandy mentioned was that she said they didn't play as physically as she'd like, and during their winning streak, they'd be able to sort of like out tough teams and really be able to sort of like win a brawl. Like if you go back to that Dallas game, it was super physical, super intense, and they were able to sort of like get cooking all the way through and hold on at the end. They didn't really have that that level of physicality today. Stewie and KT almost, it's not like they took their foot off the gas, so to speak, but I guess since they knew that they were locked into the two no matter what, it's like, do I want to hit the gas a little bit harder when I don't necessarily have to?
Right.
They're competitors and they want to win. And
Sure.
then when they made their run, you saw how everything was dialed in
yeah.
the way it was. So I think if they're able to sort of like match the physicality with Washington a little bit more, I think it'll serve them right. And I think ultimately it's almost similar to how in college basketball, when a team is undefeated, they're like, oh, should they lose before the tournament starts? Just so you have a feel of a loss. They had been this winning streak was the second longest in franchise history.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you lose a game to Washington, would you rather lose in game 40 of the postseason or game 1 when everything is game for the regular season, or game 1 when we're all back to 0-0?
Right.
So it's like, hey, if you're gonna lose, might as well take an L now.
Yeah.
Take a few days, recalibrate, give yourself that little extra bit of motivation, so that way when Friday night comes, you dialed it.
And what stood out to you from what Sandy Brondello and JJ and MJ were saying post game about kind of that trying to strike that balance?
Yeah, like JJ mentioned that she treated it like a playoff game in a sense, where she was really able to sort of like attack on offense, really have a big presence on the interior. So that's something that she was really wanting to focus on. Sandy just mentioned just sort of like cleaning up a few things, like matching the physicality a little bit more. So I think for New York, it's a situation where even though this was like their C game, so to speak, it was still down to the wire, which I think speaks to how good they've gotten. And I think it also speaks to like their level of, okay, this is a group that when they've been down, they always know to get back up.
Right.
I think after the game against the Sparks on Thursday, I think it was their 4th victory from coming back from down at least 14 points. So this team knows, okay, when they know when they're down, they can get back up. They can really go on those runs and really figure things out in that way. So I think for them, it's just a matter of studying. And since it's the same team and you've seen them in really intense games, especially in this building, the first game here was overtime thriller. This one down to the final seconds.
Right.
So they know what to do with execution, how to put things together in the way that they need to. So I think it's gonna be a good learning lesson for them. And it's something where you get staggered a little bit, which almost like wakes you up out of like a perfect dream, where it's like, oh, you're in dreamland. Get back into reality, and sort of like figure out how to get back to where you want to go. So I think a game like this will sort of help sharpen them up a little bit for this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And, the final score was 90-88 in favor of Washington. Obviously, it was Brittany Sykes with the buzzer beater to win the game. And one thing that Washington definitely said is they did not want to go to overtime.
Neither did Liberty.
We had JJ on the ball, so when you have 0.5, try to get the biggest player out there to make it really hard. It was a great pass, obviously, from Cloud. Brittany Sykes, she jumps higher than most players in this league. We really thought they were doing some kind of screen for Deladon. But, they got us on that curl. She got it. It was a perfect pass, and she made a tough shot. So, credit to them. It was good execution on their half, and maybe it was good that we didn't go to overtime.
Right. I mean, both teams would have had the ability to rest, but it just, it's something that you're thinking of. Obviously, both teams were thinking about it. A little bit of a sleepy night for Stewie. We were in the 4th quarter, and she, I believe, still had only 3 points.
Yeah, it was a lot of. She mentioned she talked with us in the scrum, and she mentioned that she got some good looks that she wanted. They just weren't going in.
Yeah.
But I think the great thing about Breanna Stewart is that even when her shot isn't falling, she's still active and putting her hands all over the court. And she wound up hitting the basket that tied the game in the end, and made if the clock man just sort of let the clock run a little bit more, we might have had the block of the season to end regulation before 5 minutes of overtime. But I think it still helps that she's able to really sort of put her imprint in the game, really be able to sort of like be all over the court, be captaining things out the way that she does. So I think that even in games where she struggles, it's like, all right, she's still such a presence that you can't just be like, oh, Stewie's cold. I could just like put my weakest defender on her. I could just like ignore her a little bit. the way she plays commands so much attention and that almost ultimate respect. I think it's the same for Deladon in a way, where it's like Deladon only had 6 shots, and she went for a while without even having shot attempts up. But it's like, oh, Deladon is still in the court. That's the 50, 40, 90 player. I got to make sure I'm dialed in 100%.
Absolutely. I mean, and speaking of Elena Deladon, I mean, we've had Misha on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, including our last episode. But we have been talking, Misha has joined us, and we've been talking about this Washington team. Because Washington, again, watch the full post game. It's hilarious. But one of the things that Washington was talking about, like, Connecticut Sun type disrespect that they felt was coming their way. And I feel like, Brian, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Washington is not a team to be trifled with.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about how I told people bet the house when they played Vegas, and if they were healthy enough that game, you would have won a new house. So I'm even though I was wrong, I was still kind of right in a sense. But for Washington, what's really great about them is that their backcourt defense is so strong and so tough, and I think that it always makes for a tough challenge for guards.
Yeah.
One thing for New York that I liked was that Sabrina was really able to get going at a certain point. After the game on Thursday, she started that game 0 for 8 to start, and then she wound up finishing with a really strong 16 and went perfect from 3 after halftime. Yep. And she talked to us in postgame. She was like, that was just sort of shaking off the rust in a sense. And today she had a really excellent game, 6 for 9 from the field, 4 for 6 from downtown, 27 and 7. So she's able to sort of shake off that rust a little bit more, have success against a really elite backcourt like Washington does have. And on nights where Stewie may not have it going, you can still be like, oh, I have another high volume scorer who can bend the floor to its absolute limits and create space for people on the inside. We saw how JJ was able to sort of have that success in the paint. She was really able to do damage in that regard.
Absolutely.
And I think just peeking a little bit ahead to this weekend, we're assuming Shakira Austin won't be available. I think last reporting I saw, she's supposed to go see a hip specialist, I believe.
Yes. And so Eric Thibault talked about this pregame. I also visited Washington pregame, and Eric Thibault would not commit to a timeline. And part of that is because she's on her way to see a third specialist. And so it was Kareem Copeland who was here. He is the beat writer for the Washington Post for the Washington Mystics, and was asking follow-up questions there. And again, Eric Thibault and the Washington Mystics would not commit one way or another, but I think you can deduce a few things. It's going to take time to see an additional specialist and then get whatever the prognosis is there, or diagnosis. I guess it depends on what they're looking at. And then for the team and Shakira to decide how they want to proceed. So that's going to take some time. Is it going to take more time than tip off on Friday? The team will travel to New York, which is I'm calling it the Amtrak series, but they will travel on Thursday, so it's closer than Vegas.
Oh boy, could you imagine? And now to think about it, there was the reporting from Howard Megdal at the Next about how the league has sort of reversed course on charter flight policy, because they told us that, oh, everybody gets charters in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden it was oh, wait a minute about that, guys. When I said all playoffs, that depends. So for
all had the asterisk.
Yes, just this really fine print that you need super strong glasses these to find. So for a team like Washington, being on the East Coast is a blessing. You don't have to lug all across. You don't have to lug across the country.
That's same time zone.
Yeah, same time zone. Don't have to play Wednesday night. You have an extra day just to rest your bodies up, get comfortable, do what you need to do, and then make it back into this neighborhood for a few days, which is perfect. So I think for the Mystics franchise, this worked out perfectly for them because it's ideal. You don't have to expend any extra energy. You're in the same time zone. You're in the same East Coast area. It's perfect. New York to DC is simple enough. So I think it helps the team in that regard. That way they don't have to sort of lug all across the country just to play a big time matchup like this. I think it works out well. And I guess from a viewer's perspective, I was thinking about it during the game. It's kind of hilarious that we thought that Liberty Aces was going to be all the down to the wires game when it turned out to be Liberty Mystics, which I
Yes.
find to be
Yes.
awesome.
It's great. I mean, it's great for the league. And yes, Washington also talked about that. But we have some other matchups as well. So we know that Minnesota will play Connecticut, and then Chicago will schlep out to Vegas. So those are the games on Wednesday. And then it's Atlanta versus Dallas. And then, of course, Washington and the New York Liberty. Those will be the Friday games. Who do you think could maybe be a spoiler? I mean, other than Washington, but potentially. But we talked a lot about Washington. Who else do you like in the playoffs?
For Dallas and Atlanta, I think I've made clear that I'm not the biggest dream guy. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's something missing with that team. I guess because they're really young and they're down some bigs. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant with them. But Dallas, I feel like the Wings are so confusing to me. Like one day they'll muscle the Liberty in Brooklyn. They'll take it to the Aces. They'll muscle the Aces around, and then you look and it's like, oh, they're arguing with the referees again. They're not getting back on defense again. Oh, they just got a technical. Even Crystal Daintree, who don't bother nobody, she got a technical. It's like, wait a minute, like guys, like what? Help me out here. So I feel like that series has the potential to swing in so many different variables.
Drama. Yeah, I think what I would say to kind of latch on to what you're saying is that both of these teams, like you mentioned, are young, but they have, I mean, the talent is undeniable. And they are temperamental. They're a temperamental team. I mean, how many times have we talked on this show about JJ? Imagine like a team of JJs, you know, whether it's that they're just tired, which sometimes when the body is tired or the mind is tired, then, you know, you have a short fuse. But I think also being able to settle in, and that's actually something, talking about the physicality for New York, I actually thought they were very composed in this game, which I liked, but it really stood out to me that it was more Washington that was a little bit spirited and fired up at times, really off the hop in this game. And so I think there's a balance that the Liberty have to find. I loved that they weren't really nitpicking on every little thing. That being said, you don't want to lose all of your fire. And I think it was a tame game for the New York Liberty. So I think you're right that Atlanta Dallas series has a lot of potential to be pretty spicy.
Yes, a series full of antics, if you will.
Antics, I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to end this episode here. Brian and I will both be around in New York. We will be at game 1. And we are going to try to coordinate schedules so we can get Misha back on again, because we have to preview the series now. We're going to have to preview the series. And then WNBA award ballots are due later tonight.
The pressure is on for the voter.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. I am not looking forward to it. But since you do have at least one voter here on this podcast, Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans brought to you by Black Rosie Media, that means we get to talk about it.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Thank you as always for tuning in. Make sure you are following Black Rosie Media and of course the local W for all of our recaps of what is not just the New York Liberty season, but what we think is going to be a pretty exciting playoffs. Remember, it's a 3-game series, best of 3. All teams play in the first round. No more buys. We're done with that.
No more single game eliminations.
Oh gosh, single game eliminations. What a time. But we're pretty excited. We're going to have more hashtag content for you. So be well, everyone. Take a breath, take a beat, and we'll be back before Friday's game. Peace out, everybody.